Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest Retail Think Tank brainstorming session. If you've been joining us for these conversations, thanks so much again for taking the time out today. But if you haven't, a little bit of an overview about our goals. So the Retail Think Tank is a curated hub of the latest news, research, and insights designed to help retail executives chart their paths forward and turn disruption into new opportunity. Speaking of which, if you've been keeping an eye on the latest developments and trying to uncover new opportunities for your business, you have likely seen some research and insights from McKinsey, which is why I'm thrilled to have Jess Huang with me. She is a partner at McKinsey, and we're going to dig into some of the latest research from the firm. Jess, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alicia.
So like I noted, McKinsey recently launched some exciting new research on the growth triple play. Anything with growth, I'm sure, gets a lot of attention and excitement. And this research basically shows companies that integrate creativity, analytics, and purpose are delivering at least 2 times the growth of their peers. So let's start high level, and then we'll dig into some specific areas. Can you tell us a bit more about the research and some of the key findings?
Of course. This was a really exciting piece of research that we did, and we really think that it provides some really amazing insights on the future of growth and how companies and CMOs in particular should be thinking about it. And just sort of to provide some of the context and set the groundwork for, everything. We know that marketing has been really demanding, and CMOs have been faced with a really complex and ever-changing landscape. And as a result, their role, the function has been challenged in many different ways. And in the pandemic, we've seen this even more so, right? We saw decades worth of e-commerce adoption in just a matter of months. And we saw that, customers are less loyal than they were before. So 75% of consumers actually told us they've tried new digital behaviors, channels, and brands, and they're considering continuing to do that. And so this sort of sets the stage for why it's so important for CMOs and companies to think about how they can unlock this growth for their organizations. And to do that, we found that it's really a combination of creativity, analytics, and purpose all together.
Yeah, very fascinating. So let's dig into those opportunities for marketing and specifically the CMO, because I feel like between the shifting of channels and, like you noted, the fluctuation in loyalty, right? People kind of changing brands out of necessity, or, because there has been a frustration or a friction point. So like, I might as well just try something different, right? Very challenging, but also if you tap into some of those creative opportunities and those new channels, you could probably make some magic happen, right? So what are some of the unique opportunities for marketers as they set their plans for, the next quarter or even the next year, right? What really stands out to you?
You're exactly right? When you have a landscape that's changing so quickly, when you have consumer shifts and trends, that are moving really quickly, I actually think that the CMO role is, so much more important. If you think about the CMO, they're in many ways closest to the consumer and the customer, both in terms of being able to drive to the insights on how consumers and customers are behaving, but also in terms of responding really quickly in the way you communicate and engage with your customers and consumers. And so if you think about that positioning and sort of how close they are to the end consumer, they're really uniquely, positioned here to be that growth partner to the CEO. And so for them, I think being able to tap into that customer data as well as use all of the channels available to them really allows them to think about cultivating a strong relationship with their customer that's built on trust and sort of the shared mission and actually advancing their company's growth agenda.
Got it. So, I mean, what are the secrets to capitalizing on this new opportunity? I could imagine that, for me, someone who's just covering the space and is interviewing experts, I'm like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. But if you're doing it and living it and breathing it every day, I'm sure some obstacles emerge, some challenges. So how do marketers bring the growth triple play to life? How do they make it a reality for their business?
Yeah, so you're right. It's really hard. And we actually found that only 7% of companies have successfully implemented what we're calling the growth triple play. And this is really pulling together creativity, analytics, and purpose. And in particular, I think there are a few key areas that it really comes down to. The first is being able to pull analytics and creativity together to take a full 360-degree view of their customers and actually move faster and drive to the speed of creativity. And so that looks like being, much more personalized in the customer experience. And we found that leaders in this area are actually 2.5 times more likely to prioritize an agile content model and personalized content for their customer. The second thing is actually thinking about where to deploy your analytics and doing it with what we call with purpose, right? In this age of so much data available to you all of the time, how do you actually think about the way you set up and use your data in a very directed way, but also in a way where you're able to use the data and the insights across your entire business? So leaders in this area are 3.7 times more likely to make their data and insights easily and quickly available across their entire organization to drive the decision making. And so while we're talking about, the CMO and marketing, the CMO and marketers in this position are actually helping to make that data available to everyone else across the entire organization. And then I think the last one is using purpose to help guide and make some of these critical decisions as you are doing the other two things that we just talked about. And I think that really, comes through both in how you communicate to your customers as well as how you nurture your own, organization and talent within your workforce.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And if you don't mind, I'd really like to drill into that point of purpose a bit more, because I feel like you kind of alluded to this in your last response. This notion of purpose can kind of cover two different areas. It's like purpose-driven marketing or purpose-driven business, which is when you bring something to market and that's the interaction that you have with your consumers. It's contributing to environmental or social issues. We're seeing it kind of fall under that umbrella, but then it's also this notion of being purposeful or intentional in how you do things as an organization, and your strategy, your roadmap, how you even work, right? Which I think both areas are very fascinating alone, but when you bring them together, I could imagine there are a lot of, interesting opportunities. So can we dig into a little bit more the role that purpose plays in shaping that organizational strategy as a whole? Any other factors that you think are really rising to the top right now?
You're right that these two elements of purpose are really important. And I actually think the most important thing is the two actually have to be very congruent. And so when you think about the message and the purpose that you are projecting to your customers and to your consumers, that's in your product, in your everyday marketing, in your communications, on social, all of that is really, really important. And it needs to be consistent with the way you're projecting your purpose to your employees and your workforce as well. Because in today's day and age, your workforce and your talent, which is your competitive edge, really wants to be able to work at a company where the purpose is aligned with them as individuals. And with all of the increased transparency in today's world, it soon becomes really apparent when the purpose and the company mission are not quite aligned with how a company operates, internally as well. And so when we think about this purpose, what's interesting is there's no right answer, right? Different companies have different purposes, and that's absolutely and totally fine. But there is an expectation for the organization's customers, employees, other stakeholders to know that you sort of stand for something and that you are sort of authentic and true to that.
Yeah, I think your point about follow through and not just putting things to market or standing aligned with a particular cause or issue and then the work not being done internally. I think, employees know that that's happening and now consumers know that that's happening too. So making sure the two come together is definitely a good point. And I know that you are an active leader at McKinsey and play a role in McKinsey's Women in the Workplace initiative, which has been a huge topic, a huge area of concern, especially over the last 18 months. So I feel like it's only appropriate that we kind of talk about your role there, the work that McKinsey is doing and how that almost transcends into how you advise clients in bringing that purpose to life and kind of prioritizing inclusion in the way that's really needed right now.
Thanks for asking about that. So the Women in the Workplace research is something that McKinsey has done and now is in the 7th year in partnership with Lean In. And it is the largest study of its kind in North America on both the representation and the experiences of women in the workplace. And that's all women across all tenures, mothers, not mothers, women of color, and looking deeper into intersectionality. And I think consistently what you find, not just for women, but honestly for men as well, is that there is this deep desire to want to connect to your company. And it is important for people to feel like they can perform at their best because they are included and they're valued. And it's tied to the overall performance of the company as a whole. And so to actually be able to think about attracting and retain diverse talent, which we know drives company performance, you need to have sort of this clear commitment from leadership to make the time and effort to engage employees, put in the right policies and programs, and encourage everyday inclusion through anything from your formal infrastructure all the way to everyday cultural norms that you're building into the way a company works together. And again, that all needs to be done in a way that's consistent with a company's broader mission and broader purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of connect the dots around, the work being done in the organization and how that impacts, what's being put out into market. I know, one passion point of mine is figuring out how to create more inclusive content experiences and how that transcends across, your copywriting, your creative choices, how you collaborate. And if you don't have that inclusivity internally, how do you not even realize or know what viewpoints or experiences you're missing, right? So it's interesting to see how it all comes together. And it's clear that there are not just, so many opportunities or areas to improve upon, but that means there's a lot of white space, right? There's a lot of opportunity to differentiate and stand out and not just win more customers and win more business, but retain that top talent like you were talking about earlier. So, kind of looking out over the next year, right? Everyone loves a good forward-looking closer question. What do you think are the biggest trends in the marketplaces relative to some of the topics we talked about today? What can marketers or even business leaders as a whole do to prepare and be at the forefront of these opportunities and really seize them?
Yeah, so I think, there are a few things, and I can also give an example of, one of the areas where we think marketers are doing a good job. The first one is to sort of get in the driver's seat and take control of the growth agenda versus just being reactive, right? We talked earlier, Alicia, about how there's a lot of opportunity actually when there's a lot of change and disruption in the consumer landscape. And I think the first thing is for CMOs to recognize that and see where there are potential tailwinds for them to take advantage. And so I really encourage marketers to sort of get in that driver's seat. I think in order to do that, you also have to be willing to sort of rethink or break previous ways of working and do it in a way that you're built for speed, right? So how do you think about more real-time analytics? How do you think about encouraging the right talent model to pivot and react to consumer trends in a way that's timely and relevant and effective. And this likely means that you have to potentially break your ways of working across the organization and actually collaborate even more effectively than you have been with other functions to adapt quickly and make some of those data-driven decisions. And make them, quickly versus sort of taking the normal time where you have to sort of go through the, process and all the red tape. And I think the last one is sort of rethinking who all the partners and players in your ecosystem are and how you actually can take advantage of them in a new way and actually think about the value that unlocks for you. So an example of an area like this is commerce media, right? And it's an area that we've been focusing on a lot more in the last year or so because of this big shift to e-commerce and the acceleration of e-commerce, as well as, of course, the continued shift in digital marketing dollars, right? And so interestingly enough, commerce media is the media channel that's actually grown and spend during COVID, because marketers are understanding that if you invest in advertising that's being offered by a retailer, you become much closer to the actual transaction and you can actually drive the customer to your actual point of sale versus, previously just being on a publisher. And so for brands, this presents a really interesting opportunity to rethink where they're spending their advertising dollars and how they partner with retailers in a new way. And for retailers, this is a huge growth opportunity that they can unlock in an entirely new revenue stream. And so sort of for both parties, right, as you think about this ecosystem and using other players in the ecosystem in a different way, you suddenly realize that there are opportunities for everyone to grow.
Fascinating. It's always interesting to see how content and commerce come together. But when you add new growth opportunities and new revenue opportunities into the mix, it really proves that bottom line value for the retailers, for the brands, and ultimately the consumer. So definitely an area to watch. But for now, Jess, thank you so much for taking the time out to give us a scoop on some new McKinsey research, share your take on how we can be a bit more purposeful in the work that we're doing. And to all of you watching, we'll make sure that there are links to that research so you can dig in and uncover some more ideas and opportunities for your business. But just for now, thank you again so much for taking the time out. It was a real pleasure.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me, Alicia.
And to all of you, if you're looking for some more fantastic insights, ideas, real life use cases, I encourage you, go to the Retail Think Tank Hub. We have plenty more where that came from. But for now, thanks so much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.